to the Essentially You podcast, Jack Canfield. How are you doing today, Jack?
I am really well, thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being here. One of the first things I want to just ask you is I know you have helped millions of people create the success they want, the results they want, including myself. And I'd love to just have you just briefly talk about what inspired you to do the work that you do. Like what did it look like that day where you thought to yourself, you know what, like I have a bigger message to share?
Well, it started subtly. I started my career as a high school teacher in Chicago. I was teaching history in an all-black inner city school. And I very quickly learned that my students were not motivated to learn. They didn't believe in themselves. And so I became much more interested in how to motivate them. And it led to like developing self-esteem and self-confidence. And so by the end of that first year of teaching, I had taken a workshop with a man named W. Clement Stone, who was a good friend of Napoleon Hill. They co-wrote a book together. And Napoleon Hill, as you know, wrote Think and Grow Rich. So
Yes.
basically, I was exposed at the age of probably about 22 or 23 to all of this thinking in terms of, positive mental attitude and goals and visualization, affirmations, taking action, asking for feedback, not giving up, all that kind of stuff. So after a few years of teaching high school, I was so good at it that the school system asked me to start teaching other teachers. And then I started traveling all around the Midwest, working for the Stone Foundation, teaching teachers workshops. And that was exciting. And then what happened is what was it, about 1993, there was the first Gulf War, and all the teacher money dried up. There was no money for conferences. There was no money for in-service education. And I realized I had to re-vector my work into the world of adults and, people that were in the general public. And I'd also been married to a psychologist for a while who trained me to be a psychologist. This was before licensing laws were in Massachusetts. So I had a private practice, and I wanted to take these same principles of human potential and overcoming your childhood traumas and all of that into the schools and then eventually into the general public. So it was a gradual progression.
I love it. Thank you so much. I was telling you before we got started that in 2008, I had just finished grad school and I was going out into the world. And before I had finished grad school, I had been a biochemist. So my whole life, I had just kind of been in the lab, and I hadn't ever thought about entrepreneurship or even any concept around visualization or the law of attraction or really stepping up to create and, well, really more so having a vision for creating what you want. And so I was given this book. I know we're talking about this today. We're talking about the workbook, and this book completely changed my life. And you can tell it's traveled with me for quite some time. But one of the first things that I took away from it was, if you want to be successful, you have to take 100% responsibility for everything that you experience in life. And that was like a major drop down. I just owned that so much from there on out. Can you talk a little bit about how that has played out for you in your life as you've guided yourself through creating success, and how you've seen that play out in other people's lives as well?
Well, I think when I grew up, my dad was a blamer and a complainer. He was someone who blamed the rich people, the corporations, the government for everything that wasn't working in his life. And I think I probably picked up on that because that's the culture I grew up in. And it was when I met Stone, he asked me 3 questions on my first interview. Do you take 100% responsibility for your life? And I said, I think so. He said, son, it's a yes or no question. So do you do or don't you? And I said, I'm not sure. I don't even understand the question. He said, have you blamed anyone for anything in the last week? I said, yeah. Have you complained about anything? I said, yeah. You've made an excuse about anything? I said, yeah. He said, then you don't take 100% responsibility. So that was the beginning of my education, to realize that the thoughts I think, the images I hold in my head, and the things I say and do and don't do, those are the things that are creating my reality. And that everything I'm currently experiencing is the result of choices I made in the past, and everything I'm going to experience in the future are the result of the choices I'm making now. The food I eat, the people I hang out with, the television shows I watch, the books I read or don't read, whether I exercise or not, all of those things are under my control. And a lot of people they'll say like, well, I'm not responsible for getting cancer. And I'll say, well, let me ask you a few questions. Do you only eat an alkaline food-based, plant-based diet? No. Do you cleanse on a regular basis? No. Do you take saunas or steam baths so that you raise the temperature in your body to kill off microbes and things? No. Do you juice? No. Are you eating, Tomatoes we find out are not good now because of the, it leads
The
to, leaky
leptins.
gut
Yeah.
syndrome and all the
Mhm.
lectin. So, do you have Wi-Fi in your home? Are you wearing, earbuds like the little things that people have now that are sending EMFs into their brain? No. Well, why not? I didn't know you're supposed to do those things. Well, who's responsible to find out the things you need to know? You know,
That's so true.
it, it's
That's
really it's really critical that we take responsibility for learning how to manage this body we've been given. I noticed you've got an essential oil book behind you there on the shelf, so I assume that's you. And
yes.
you're into essential oils, which is a great thing. So am I. And so the reality is that most people are ignorant. They're spending their time binge watching on television instead of taking responsibility for their life, their happiness, their financial state, and their state of abundance, the quality of their relationships, and so forth.
Well, Jackie, you mentioned, that first step, let's say if we were wanting to really take care of our bodies, really wanting to have a body that is full of vitality and joy and energy, that there is responsibility that we have to take. And that first step is really that knowledge and seeking out that information. When people are looking at the idea of taking responsibility for their life and they're not exactly sure how to do that, what is the first step? And I know you covered this in the book as well. Like, what would be that first step to really taking ownership of the decisions that you're making every single day?
The first thing, there's a little formula in the book that I think is transformative. It says E plus R equals O. It stands for events plus response equal your outcomes. And if you don't like the outcomes of what you're experiencing now, everything you're experiencing now is an outcome of a previous choice in the past. So ask yourself, am I as healthy as I want to be? Am I as wealthy as I want to be? Am I as calm and peaceful and happy and fulfilled and content as I want to be? Am I happy in my relationships? So on and so forth. And if the answer is no, then you have to ask yourself, how am I creating this? There's an exercise I have in the book and I also have in the workbook called difficult and troubling experiences. And you start with, what's a difficult or troubling experience in your life? And you say, well, it might be my relationship with my son. Then you say, how are you creating or promoting or allowing that to happen? Well, I don't talk to him that much. I avoid difficult conversations. I'm a single mom. He's my only friend. If he gets upset with me, I won't have anyone in my life. We call that emotional incest, by the way. So what happens is that the next question is, what am I pretending not to know? I had a client who was living in New York who was being robbed about every 3 months. And I said, well, describe your living quarters. Well, it's a first floor apartment, New York City. And I said, do you have bars on the window? No. Do you have a triple lock on the door? No. So the third question is, what are you pretending not to know? And he said, I don't know. I said, you're pretending not to know you live in a first floor apartment in New York City. So the reality is you are going to get robbed because that's crazy. You're not protecting yourself. And then it's like, what would I rather have? And then how could I create it? And what's it going to cost me? There's always a payoff for keeping it like it is. I remember literally I was in New York and I went up to this person in seminar said, would you come visit my husband in the hospital after we're done? I said, sure. And so I went to see him and he was going to have an operation. And I said, I have a healing technique that I think is about 80% likely to heal you. You wouldn't need the operation. And he said, no, I want the operation. And I said, why? He said, I think it's good for 3 months off work. So here's a guy who's going to put his life at risk in terms of all kinds of, bacteria, blood transfusions that could be tainted, neurological problems that could happen. But he was willing to do that for the 3 weeks off work. There's kids in school that get in trouble all the time because that's the only time their parent ever pays attention to them. So there's always a payoff. When we were in school, if we were sick, we'd have to take a test. We got to eat ice cream or ginger ale, and the TV was in our room, whatever it is. So it was a payoff for being sick. So then it takes you down to a couple more questions. What would you rather have? What would you have to do to get it? And how committed are you doing? But if you take yourself through that exercise with any area of your life where you're not satisfied, you begin to see, oh, I'm participating in keeping this going. And therefore, then you begin to go, wow, I really am responsible. And so you begin to say, okay, what would I rather have? And then you can start creating it using the rest of the principles that are in the books.
I love that. I love that kind of that upgraded thought of what would I rather have? What can I do from where I'm at right now with what I've got? It reminds me a lot of, as you're telling that story, of the limiting beliefs that we get stuck in, the stories that we get stuck in, and how often a lot of those stories are the reason why we have them is the false positives that they bring to our lives that people don't realize. Like an example of someone saying that I'm not marriage material, and a false positive to that is like, you don't have to go out and try to meet somebody. You can just stay at home. You can keep telling that story to your friends to gather sympathy. Can you talk a little bit about how we can get trapped inside of our limiting beliefs? I know this is a part of the book too. This was eye-opening for me. Like I had never even thought about limiting beliefs or stories that I had been trapped in, kind of that victimhood mentality, until I had read this book for the first time in 2008. And it just dawned on me how many stories that were holding me back from
Right.
what I could possibly become.
Sure. Well, we all have beliefs that come from our childhood. Most of our beliefs are actually formed between the ages of 3 and 8. And I often tell people, if you were getting on an airplane and you saw a 6-year-old pilot walk into the pilot seat and get on sit behind the steering wheel of the plane, most people would freak out because you wouldn't think he had much experience. Well, most of us are walking around with a 3-year-old and 8-year-old running our life. And
Yes.
so basically what happens is we make these beliefs at the time to help us understand what's going on. And then we forget we made the belief. And then we're being run by this belief subconsciously. I'll give you an example. Working on a book right now with another psychologist, and we're talking about how to get unstuck. And there was a woman who was an Olympic level athlete who was doing really great in practice. Her times were amazing, but when she would compete, she wouldn't do as well. And we work this process we have that we take people through is one that's powerful as heck. And she ended up back when she was about 10, she's in her room and she asked her mother, "Mom, why don't you display my trophies, my medals, and my ribbons like all my other teammates get at their house? They have bulletin boards and trophy cases." And the mother said, "Well, whenever you bring a trophy home or a ribbon, it makes your brother feel bad because he never gets those." And so she decided, I don't want to hurt my brother's feelings, so I'm not going to win. And so here she is now. She's 23 years old. She's a world-class athlete, but she's not winning because every time she goes to race, some subconscious thing inside of her says, if I win, I'm going to hurt my brother. I'm going to hurt the people I love. Once we were able to help her see that she had made that decision and it wasn't accurate, and that she wasn't responsible for other people's decisions and other people's feelings, she was able to let that go. And now her times are as good or better in competition than they were before. I had another client who, after college, this was older in his life, but he came home from work with his first paycheck right after college. He got a job in the same company his father had been working in for 11 years. And his paycheck in his first month was bigger than his father's paycheck. It was a commission check. And he goes to show it to his dad to show him how proud he is. And his dad just kind of slumps down and walks out of the room. And later his mother says, "Yeah, your dad was really hurt because he felt bad that he was making less money than you." So he didn't want to hurt his dad. So basically he decided, I'll never make more money than my father. Well, here he was now 43, making 1/10 of what he was potentially able to make. Once he realized that and let it go, the next year he made over $1.5 million. So the reality is we all have these beliefs. And as you said, we have stories that we tell ourselves. It's not safe to do this. It's not okay to do that. Money doesn't grow on trees. you know, I remember working in Australia in a workshop, and there was this woman who was inherited wealthy and she was hiding it. She was dressing like a hippie. She wouldn't use her money. And she just said, all I've ever seen is money destroy a family, because her parents, never were there for her. They were always out working. They fought a lot about it. And so I don't want to have that in my life. There's a group called the Donuts Group, which is all inherited millionaires, kids in 20s. They all hide their money. One kid, once he was getting these checks, and he just kept throwing them into a box in the closet. And he realized one day that they couldn't pay their rent. So he said, well, I'll open up one of the checks. It was for $100,000. His dad had invented opiophonic print, which is those numbers on the bottom of your checks that look like little computer things. And he had $8 million worth of checks in his closet, but he didn't want to own them because he felt guilty about it. So the reality is we have to let those go. And there's some powerful tools for doing that.
Hmm. I just wanted to have you touch upon that, because I know that that comes up so much for people. I think more than anything is that we just get stuck by our own belief mechanisms, that what we were brought up with or unconsciously, thinking about as children, that keep playing out for us as adults.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Well, just to give you one more example,
Yeah.
I was working with a company called Isogenics, which is a multi-level marketing weight loss company. And one of the things that kept showing up for these very, very obese women, people that were up, in the 280 to 300 pound range, when they would start to lose weight, which they would because the products worked, they would start to get into these levels of fear. And when we really worked with them, what we found was that almost every single one of them had been sexually abused as a child. And their solution to that was to be not attractive. And as they started to lose weight and became more attractive, it brought up all these fears that men are going to come onto me and I won't know what to do. They're going to take advantage of me. And so there's so many subconscious fears that we have based on these beliefs. And you have to literally face them and then release them and then reprogram them.
I love that. I want to just shift gears a little bit. Right now we just happen to be interviewing during a time where a lot of people are feeling like life is happening to them and they don't necessarily have or think that there is a way of changing that outcome, that life isn't happening for them. I would love to have you share your take on the law of attraction, about how our thoughts, our feelings, and our beliefs kind of play a role in what we attract. And then how can we begin to shift that, especially right now where people are really feeling the opposite?
Well, as we're all dealing with, the coronavirus or COVID-19, however you want to call it, there's a lot of fear out there.
Yes.
And so let's start by examining fear for a minute. Fear is the result of imagining something in the future that hasn't happened yet that's bad. And so right now, in the present moment, people that are watching this, you and I, we're healthy, we're okay. We have food in the pantry. We have food in the refrigerator. We have our pets, our family around us. We have television shows to watch. We have books to read. We have some money for most of us. We have credit cards, which we can certainly amp up if we need to. And so in order to be afraid, you have to imagine something in the future, like I'm going to lose my house. My restaurant won't be able to open again. I'll never get that job again. My husband will get sick. My parents are going to die, whatever it is. But the fact is that's not happening right now. So fear, as you know, lowers your vibration.
Yes.
Whenever you're in fear, you're back in the amygdala, which is the back part of the brain, which hijacks the prefrontal cortex, which is where rational thinking and creative thinking, which we all need to be rational now. We need to be creative. Nobody needs 7,000 rolls of toilet paper. I saw a cartoon recently where it showed this guy, he'd built an igloo out of toilet paper and he was kind of peeking out, it's like, hide in here until the virus is gone.
Everyone's just building igloos with toilet paper.
There you go. So what happens is that we want to be maintaining our vibration as high. We want to be thinking positive thoughts. So we're going to get through this. I'm going to be surviving. If you look at the facts, depends on who you listen to. Bill Gates, who had predicted this kind of pandemic in 2015 and said, we're not prepared. He was right. Nobody listened. He was being interviewed on CNN the night before we were recording this. And he said, maybe 1% of the population will die. Well, that means 99% we're all safe. And so then the question goes back to E plus R equals O. The event's called the coronavirus pandemic. Your response is your thoughts. Are you thinking positive thoughts? I'm going to get through this. I'm healthy. I'm doing the right things. Your images, which is being on the other side of this, you still have your home, you still have your job, your bank account might be a little less for a while, your stocks might go down for a while. They always come back. Being 75, I have the advantage of having lived through the Vietnam War, the Civil Rights Movement, 3 recessions, 9/11. It always comes back. It takes a while, but it always comes back. Everyone listening to this, think about this. You have survived everything that ever happened to you. You are a survivor. That is your history. That is, so we're still here. So the reality is that we have the ability to control our responses. So thinking, that's the main one. Your feelings are the result of your thoughts. We know that from all the work that's been done lately. Now, the second thing is, what do? We know if you're in your rational brain, you go out and you look at the research. There's all kinds of research on what you should be eating and what you shouldn't be eating. We know you shouldn't be eating sugar. We know you shouldn't be eating fats right now, even oils and nut butters and things like that. Viruses love fats. They love sugar. They love alcohol. So basically, let's cut back. Let's alkalize our diet. Let's be doing juicing and, alkalizers and things like that. Let's raise our body temperature through exercise, hot yoga, but in your own home, not in a group somewhere. And also, if you can take a sauna or a steam bath, do that. If you can get out in the sun wherever you are. As we record this, there's going to be a heat wave in the south this weekend. That's really a good thing. Get out there and get some sun. up level your vitamin C, D, B12, etc. So all these things are available online if you look. So that's another response. It's intelligent, you know, and also communicate with people you love. I love this thing. This one woman said the other day, the 4 M's: mindfulness, pay attention to your body. If you're sitting around, get up, stretch, breathe. If you're feeling scared, focus on your thoughts, change your thoughts. You can always change your thought to a more positive thought. Mindfulness and meditation. Meditation raises your vibration, especially if you visualize every cell. I visualize light coming down through the top of my head, going up my heart to the people I love, and then bringing it back and putting it in every cell of my body. When I do that, I get into a very high space. There's a wonderful thing online from Dawson Church called Echo Meditation, which literally, if you do this meditation for 7 days in a row, it raises the immunofactors in your blood and the immunoglobulins by 113%. So just 7 days of this meditation technique. So that to the M's, meditate, movement. If you move, it brings you into the present moment, and it also helps keep your immune system high. Mastery, do anything you're good at. If you love to play the piano and you're good at it, play the piano. It brings you into the present moment. You're out of fear, and you're not watching television. You're not watching all the statistics. You're still sheltering in place, whatever. And the last one is meaningful communication. Reach out to people, stay connected so you're not isolated.
Mm, I love all of those things. And we've been talking so much about those things on the podcast here. One of the things I want to dial in that you spoke about is that when we are in that state of fear, the amygdala absolutely hijacks our prefrontal cortex, our thought-making process, and we move into a different type of physiological state, right? A stress state. And so I love the recommendations for upgrading our thoughts, becoming more creative in those moments, taking some deep breaths, meditating, moving to keep us in the now so that we can go into that creative state. I know you could speak to this better than I can, but when we are in a fear state, we are making irrational thoughts. We're making reactive decisions. But if we can get into a relaxed state, a calm state where our prefrontal cortex is activated, we can create more creative thoughts. We can upgrade the way that we're thinking about this moment and like you said, connect into that mastery. Two things that I was speaking to a good friend of mine, Dr. Joan Rosenberg. We were talking about creativity and then how we can show up in the world. So how we can contribute. And, it's really difficult to stay in a fear-based mindset or to get stuck in our stuff, our victimhood mindset, if we are going out and supporting other people, if we're contributing to the world, whatever that contribution may be. And so it really just aligned with everything that you just said about how we can really upgrade the way that we treat this scenario.
Yeah, I would just add, one of the chapters in my Success Principles book is if you want to get wealthy, help other people get wealthy. If you want to be of service to anybody in any way, it's always going to come back to you multiplied. And so my wife, for example, was leading a meditation class online last night. And my wife's very spontaneous and fun and all that, and not the kind of person. She's really dynamic, and she got 4 emails this morning saying, "Thank God you were so fun last night. I needed that." And so whether it's just calling your in-laws and your mother and giving them some support, or your children, or whether it's being the person in the neighborhood who's going to go and buy groceries for the people that can't get out, maybe the people that are more at risk because of pre-existing conditions. In my neighborhood, I live in a kind of it's not a gated community, but it's a more wealthy community. And a lot of the kids are out of school right now. Most of them have cars because they're wealthy. And 40 kids got together and created this angels group. And they put out notices to everyone's mailbox in this area. If you need someone to go to the store, if you run out of toilet paper, if you need medicine from the CVS pharmacy, whatever it might be, we're there for you. We will do it. And these kids are like, the whole community is coming together. We're seeing a lot of scaremongering on TV. There's a group in Canada that created something called caremongering, where they're saying, okay, how can we support our neighbors? And one woman just sent out stuff to her neighbors, and they sent it out, and 1,000 people signed up within a day. And now there's like 20,000 people all across the country in Canada that have become part of this caremongers group. So the idea being that when you're in service, you're not thinking of yourself, you're not in fear. And so obviously it's really important to be of service.
Absolutely.
The 2 highest things you can be in right now is love, gratitude and appreciation, and service and joy. Those are the highest vibrations.
Can you speak to me a little bit about gratitude and how gratitude really kind of elevates not only our energy, elevates that vibration you're talking about, but what could that lead to for us? Like if we get into that state of gratitude?
I do a gratitude exercise every day at the end of my meditation. And I do it by breathing in through my heart. I learned this from the Heart Math Institute, which you're probably familiar with. Breathing in
Yes.
through my heart, breathing out through my heart, and then focusing on someone or something or someplace I really appreciate. 9 times out of 10, it's my wife. The other time, it's my dog.
Love it.
So I send this beam of light energy out to them, and I see my wife or my dog surrounded by all this love and so then I bring it back to myself, and then I send it to my cells. So every cell in my body is filled with appreciation and gratitude. And then I also think about all the other things I'm grateful for, this rampage of appreciation that Abraham teaches through Esther Hicks. The idea that as I'm sitting here, I'm grateful to have an opportunity in the middle of this coronavirus to be promoting my new workbook. And I look out the window. It's a sunny day in Southern California. I see the palm trees on my property, the oak trees, a blue sky. I see all the books surrounding me, which I get to read and benefit from. I see my phone, which works, my computer works, my desk, which is here, this wonderful water that I get to drink. I'm grateful for all the food that is in my pantry. I could just go on and on and on. And so when I do that, I get high. It's like, I have been stoned before. I did inhale when I was younger. And so I know what that feels like. And the reality is that I can feel the vibrational difference in my body when I do that. And therefore, my cells are healthier. I feel energized. I'm coming from love. And think about this. We are attracted to people who are vibrating at a high level. I used to say if Robin Williams walked into a room, most people would gravitate over there because he's so interesting and fun and funny. Now, we know later that he was also dealing with a lot of, self-doubt and things like that. But the reality is that I used to do this exercise in my trainings where I'd have 300 people stand up, close their eyes, and have to mill around and connect with people with their eyes closed. And they can make sounds but no words. And eventually there'd be about 30 people just laughing their asses off over somewhere, maybe jumping up and down and laughing. Pretty soon, 90% of the group would gravitate toward them because they would gravitate toward the highest energy. And so if you're in this high space of love and joy and appreciation and gratitude, you're going to attract to you more people that want to do business with you, that want to connect with you, that can support your businesses, your abundance, and also your health. So I think gratitude is critical. Meister Eckhart, who was a German mystic, once wrote, if the only prayer you ever prayed was thank you, that would be enough. When you think about that, we're supposed to say grace before dinner or lunch or breakfast. We use the word gracias in Spanish, which is the same root word as grace and gratitude. So we receive grace by being in gratitude. The more I'm thankful, if you've ever given a gift to someone and they were enthusiastically thankful, you can't wait to give them something else. But if you give them a gift and they go, thank you, and they just throw it to the side, you're not so eager to do that. I think that works on the spiritual level as well.
I'm so glad. Thank you so much for jumping in and diving a little bit deeper into that, because I think, it just shifts everything. I always tell people it's really hard to have a bad day when you start your day off with just being so grateful for the little things that you have in your life every single day. So I'm glad you're able to dial into that. I wanted to shift gears. I have a couple more questions for you. One of the other things that I loved inside of the Success Principles book, and I saw that you go into a deep dive into the workbook as well, is learning to act as if. And this was big for me. You talk about belief mindset. And when I was growing up, my family did not think I was very smart. And I remember once I had a family member tell me that, you just don't have a lot of natural talents. But if you dig into the grit and you dig into the hustle, like you just want it more than other people, you're going to create success. But when I read this, I think that belief was still messing with me as I was growing older. I remember reading this book and hearing the act as if part. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, I can step into something or, kind of imagine myself living that life or becoming that person and then taking those steps to get there. Can you extrapolate a little bit more on that and what it means and how we can step into this active as if mentality?
Sure, I'll share a couple of things with you. The first thing is that we become who we act as. In other words, there's a couple parts of this. Number one, you become the people you hang out with. So start acting as if you belong with the people you want to be. So, I used to tell people, if you can afford it, travel business class, you're going to meet people that are thinking different thoughts. It's just a different game you play. You want to read books by the people that you'd like to become. In other words, if you want to be a millionaire, read books written by millionaires. You want to be a billionaire. I just wrote a foreword to a book called The Billionaire Secret. And this guy interviewed 21 billionaires in 17 different countries. And what I found that was fascinating about this was that all these billionaires, this is everyone from age like 40 to 81, they all got up between 4:30 and 5:30 a.m. in the morning. There are books out there now called like The Miracle Morning, the 5:30 a.m. Club, things like that. And everyone but one meditated, everyone but one exercise for at least a half an hour. Even if they were going to get up and get on their private jet at 4:30 to fly somewhere, they would get up at 3:30 and work out in the gym for half an hour. So we begin to look at what are the habits and the behaviors of the very successful people. And what I did when I wrote the Success Principles book, and now with the Success Principles workbook, was to interview 75 of the most successful people in North America. And what are the thoughts they think? What are the books they read? What do they do? Do they exercise, et cetera? And what are their, let's call them disciplines of success? And really that's what the Success Principles book is, are the ways these people operate their life. The book came about because my son, when he was about 11, we were in bed one morning and on our computers, he's playing computer games. I'm thinking about things on the online, and thinking about my next book. He says, "Dad, how come our house is bigger than all my friends' houses?" And I said, "Well, because we have more money and we can afford it." "How come we have more money than everyone else?" "Well, because I wrote all these books and I figured out how to sell them." "Well, why did you do better than other authors? I know people who's got parents who write books." I said, "Well, I've been living my life by these principles." He said, "What principles are those?" And it made me think. So for the next hour, I wrote down every principle I was living my life by. Act as if, take 100% responsibility, use affirmations, whatever. And so literally what I've done is take all the things that people are doing and say, if you act like this, you will become that person. So a couple examples. One of the exercises I do in my workshops is I do two things. One's called a millionaire cocktail party. So I have everyone stand up and say, okay, for the next 20 minutes, you're a millionaire. Or if you're already a millionaire, you're a multimillionaire. And I want you to mill around and interact with people the way you would act is if you were already a millionaire. Everybody was different. People were more outgoing. They were talking about all these things. They were generous. They were saying, "I just came back from my house in the Bahamas. If you ever want to come down there for a weekend, you can do that." People were more confident. And then I stopped them. I said, "How many people felt different when you were doing that? How did you feel different?" They all explained it. Felt more powerful, felt more enthusiastic. I was more outgoing. "What changed?" "Oh, were you really a millionaire?" "No." "Were you acting like a millionaire?" "Yeah." So you acted differently when you thought you were that. The second thing is a friend of mine threw a party, which we now throw all our chains at the end. It's called the Come As You'll Be party. They rented the Queen Mary. They said, "I want everyone to come as you'll be 5 years from now if you achieved all your goals." So people showed up with 3 best-selling books they'd made mock covers of. People showed up with, one guy wanted to be a sculptor, so he's wearing a leather, what do you call it, apron, and he had his sculpture tours. There was this one kid, he was really cool, he's 21 years old. He was going, I think he had his brother call him every 10 minutes, and he'd say, "No, I told you it's over. I'm not dating you anymore. We're done. I'm sorry. I know I'm the best sex you ever had, but I'm not dating, we're done." He'd hang up. And he did that all night for 2 hours. And finally he says, "J-Lo, it's over." And so it was like so cute. People come, one woman wanted to be a TV interviewer and interview people on the red carpet. She actually rented a red carpet and hired a camera crew to come and interview, film her interviewing people as they came into the party. We hired some paparazzi to be taking everyone's pictures as they came in so they'd feel like they were famous. It was so cool. And what was really more interesting is that 5 years later, almost everyone on that ship, every one of the dreams that they had talked about had come true. Because whenever we have an image that we believe and feel strongly about, as you know from the law of attraction, when we activate that, what happens, it creates a dynamic tension between the current reality and the vision that we want to live. And so what happens is I found no better way to do that than to simply act as if you're already there. So for me, when I was growing up, and I learned this from W. Clement Stone way back when, I bought suits that were a little more than I could afford. I didn't buy a lot of them. I had 2 suits, but they were good suits. I had a nice pen, a Mont Blanc pen, which used to cost $79. It costs a lot more now. I had 3 ties, but they were nice silk ties. I would eat in nice restaurants. I would eat out less often, but I started treating myself like I wanted to be. And, I have a belief in life: buy fewer things, but buy the best things, because then you get used to the best. Hang out with people that are where you want to be. So that's basically how I play that. And I've found that it really works for people if they do that.
Hmm. I love that. I love all the ways in which we can show up, the ways in which we can start acting as if how we want to, whatever our 5-year goal is, or who we want to become in the next
Right,
several years.
right.
The last question before I ask a little bit more into the workbook is, one of the things, and we talked about fear a little while ago, and I get to work with a lot of incredible entrepreneurs and women that I get to support. But one of the things that I see happens a lot is that people don't take action on their dreams because they're so afraid of failure or not being perfect. And can you tell me a little bit about, can you shift our mindset around? Because to me, I always say either you are winning or you're learning. So can you talk a little bit about how we can turn perceived failure into big successes?
Well, the first thing you have to do is confront your fears, not so much of failure, but the inner belief that you have to be perfect. I had a woman in a workshop once who told me when she graduated, she was 41 years old, and we started talking about this. She just burst into tears. And she had this memory of when she graduated from college. She graduated from Caltech, which is like the MIT of California. And she graduated number 2, which, God almighty, that's amazing.
It is
And
amazing.
the only thing her father said to her graduation is, "Why weren't you number 1?" And she, it's kind of like you get 5 A's and a B plus, and the parents go, "What's that B plus doing there? Why didn't you get all A's?" And so you begin to believe that you're not okay unless you're perfect. And so that becomes a fear. And so then basically, to avoid not being perfect, I won't play. In other words, one of the ways to avoid failure is don't play. There's lots of ways to do that, but that's one of the big ones. And so we have to realize, first of all, that's something that's running us. We have to go back and find out that belief we have and change the belief that the only way you learn is by failing faster. Bill Gates knows that. Microsoft puts out programs. We've all bought them, and they basically have all kind of bugs in them. And we see that little screen come up and say, "Sorry, your program crashed. Should we send this information to Microsoft?" You go, "Yeah," because they're going to fix it, and it won't crash in the future when you get your updates. So basically, if they waited till everything was perfect, there would be no Microsoft, and Bill Gates wouldn't be worth billions of dollars. So we have to I take people back. If you take the word fail, FAIL, and you take the I and you just put a little line at the bottom, it's FALL. So when you were learning to walk, if your parents had said after 10 steps, "Well, you can't do this. You failed too many times. I'm not going to keep teaching you how to walk. You're just not learning fast enough." No parent ever has a deadline for how long it takes you to learn to walk. You fall down, you get up. You fall down, you get up. You fall down, you get up. And that is literally how we make success in life. As we go off course, we discover it didn't work. So if anything, you want to fail faster. The faster you fail, the more you learn. I was talking with one of the guys from Shark Tank, whose name is escaping me right now. And he's Kevin, and he was saying that 7 out of 10 businesses that he invests in fail miserably, but 3 out of 10 become awesome and make him a fortune. And he said, "So I go into every business deal realizing this is probably going to be one of my failures. But if I don't take these chances, I'm not going to find the 3 that work." And so basically, we have to be willing. What made Chicken Soup for the Soul such a phenomenal success is that when we kind of stumbled into it, we had 120 stories that we wanted to put in the first book, and we had committed ourselves to having 101. So now we got to eliminate 19 of them.
19, yeah.
So we said to our parents and our friends and our staff and anyone we could find, 20 people, we said, read all 120 stories, grade them on a scale of 1 to 10, read 9.5, 10.5, but just that's it. And so we took all the names, all the stories, put them on an Excel spreadsheet, averaged them. Anything less than a 9 never got in the book. And we ended up doing that. It became a science for us. We had Republicans and Democrats and people who don't vote and independents. We had Jews and Christians and Muslims and people that don't, are not spiritual at all. We had rural people, suburban people, urban people, old and young, all that. And they would read all the stories. Sometimes we'd have 200 stories that we thought were good. And only the ones that scored, the top 101 would get in the book. And so we weren't afraid of feedback. Feedback is the breakfast of champions, as Ken Blanchard, who wrote the 1 Minute Manager, said. So one of the things I teach in the book and in the workbook is a question you want to ask everyone you're in a relationship with: your spouse, your girlfriend or boyfriend, your employees, your staff, your vendors, your friends. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate? And then you can fill in the blank. Me as a husband this week, me as your father, me as this interview that we're doing right now, me as your boss working here, this real estate transaction, whatever. Anything less than a 10 gets a follow-up question. What would it take to make it a 10? That's where the value is. Now, I'll tell a self-revealing story here. I ask my wife that every Sunday night.
Yes.
I usually get an 8 or a 9, sometimes a 10. And one night I got a 4. This was early on when we still had kids at home. And 4, I said, what would it take to make it a 10? And she said, number 1, don't interrupt me when I'm telling a joke because you think you can tell the punchline better, which I still claim I can, but I've learned that it's not a good marital practice.
Yeah.
I don't do that anymore. Number 2, I want you to put the kids to bed without me asking. My job is to get them up to school. Your job is to make sure they go to bed. I don't care if it's Monday Night Football, NBA playoffs. It's your job. And don't make me ask. And then number 3, she said, have you ever heard of foreplay? I said, yeah. She said, you might want to revisit that concept. I went, oh.
All right.
I didn't want to hear that, right? But here's the deal. She had told her mother, her sister, her girlfriends, the people at Starbucks online, anyone but me. But I'm the only one that could change it. And so most people don't ask for feedback because they're afraid of what they're going to hear. Nobody wants to hear negative feedback. But I can't get better as a husband, better as a trainer, better as an author if I don't ask for feedback. So think of feedback as just course correction. An airplane flies to New York. Fewer of them today, but they're flying to New York. And what happens is the automatic pilot's always going, you're too low, come back up, you're too high, come back down, you're too far to the east, come back this way, you're too far to the... So the plane doesn't get upset. It just says, thank you, I'll correct, thank you, I'll correct, thank you, I'll correct. So we want to be thinking of this as a gift. Feedback is a gift. And so be willing to ask for it and to correct. It is the thing that's going to get us where we want to go.
I love that. Yeah, we do a check-in, a husband and wife check-in every single week as well, and get feedback on how we can show up better. And we do little scorecards that really just give us a good sense of, what we can do better for the next week. So I love that. And it's been so powerful for us. And we don't ask enough feedback in a lot of different areas, and definitely something we were going to incorporate more of, because you're right. It just allows us to course correct and just improve upon, hopefully as we're serving this world. I love that so much.
Good.
All right. The last question is, I've had the Success Principles book for quite some time, and I've loved it. And I've done a lot of the exercises on paper or in a journal, but you have created the workbook. And what was the impetus? Were you getting a lot of feedback, so to speak, on creating something that felt very actionable for people?
I was watching the difference between people who just read the book and people who would attend one of our seminars or go through our coaching program. And a lot of people reading the book were able to double and triple their income, but if they did the work. And there are people, my favorite story is a guy in the Philippines who was a homeless person, literally homeless. I met him. I gave him a copy of my book, said, come to my seminar for free. And he came. I came back 2.5 years later. He was a multimillionaire. And he came to my seminar. He's wearing a blue blazer and he's all dressed up. He's wearing gold Doc Marten shoes, if you can imagine that. And he had all these people in these blue polo shirts with the same logo on it coming in. And I said, you're John Caleb. You interviewed me when I was here and you were homeless. What happened? You look different. He said, yeah. He said, and he went on about all the things. He had 3 exotic cars. He had taken all these seminars with, Tony Robbins and me and so forth. And he said, I read your book. And I said, well, a lot of people read my book. He said, I know, but I did every single thing in it. He said, you were successful. I was not. You were happily married. I was not. I said, I'm going to spend 1 year doing what's in his book. And if I do everything, I'll either waste a year or my life will work. And he said, it worked. So, but not everyone does that. So I wrote this book. I'm going to hold it up.
Yes.
The Success Principles Workbook. And basically what I wanted to do was put a coaching program between the covers of a book. So people would actually do the exercises, do the work that we just suggested in the actual book. But now they have a place to write it down. They have a place to capture in their journal. They have a place, we have this thing called Make It a Habit worksheets, where we want it to become Velcroed into your brain Right now, if you ask me my phone number, I can tell you. If you ask me, the 5 causes of the Civil War, I'm not so sure I could. If you ask me the 6 questions on a difficult and troubling experience, most people couldn't answer that, but I can, because it's become a part of the way I think in life. So basically, that's what we want this book to do. There's 17 chapters. Each chapter could take a week to do. It'll take you about 4 months. With this home sheltering that we're all doing right now, cocooning in our homes, and most people are saying it's a 10-week process, a 10-week window. You could literally do the exercises maybe every 2 or 3 days, and you can order it on Amazon.com, or better, go to the successprinciplesworkbook.com. Then it'll direct you to one of those, but you'll become part of you'll get all these bonuses, and they're not the huge usual thing where there's 75 bonuses. There's 3. One is you can get the first chapter downloaded before you even get it from Amazon or Barnes & Noble or Books A Million. Second one is you're going to be able to attend a master class I'm doing, which is going to be an hour to an hour and 15 minutes of me doing the keynote that I normally do that costs $35,000 for corporations and conventions and so forth. And the third thing is there's going to be a 10-week video coaching class that you'll get with it at the same time. So I would recommend doing that. But basically, literally coming out of this sheltering in place from the pandemic, you could be like, surfing the top of the wave and literally have transformed your life in this, 10-week period. And as I like to say, for the cost of 4 or 5 Starbucks drinks, you can buy this book, and most of you are not going out to Starbucks anyway right now. So
none of us are going to Starbucks right now. We have that money. We are saving that money.
Yeah, we're talking a $20 investment to change your life, So I really encourage people to do that. And I don't need to make another dollar. I hope you're clear about that. I literally have sold 500 million books, 500 million. So for me, this is an act of love, an act of service, an act of wanting to just pass it on, pay it forward.
I just want to take a moment because books a long time ago when I was a little girl changed my life. I was reading a book a day when I was younger. And I always talk about this a lot on the podcast that, you creating a book that is $20 or $15 or whatever Amazon is selling it for, Books A Million or Barnes & Noble, like what is in here, the value is so exponential. So I just wanted to just take a moment and say thank you so much for putting everything that you've learned over all the years, things that you've practiced, the stories that you've interviewed, and then you put it into a book that each and every one of us can activate, and a workbook that we can work through literally right now every single day to change our life, to change our results, to create the life that we want. I just want to say thank you so much for doing that for us.
You are so welcome. And I appreciate the feedback.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Jack, any other place you would like to come and check you out? So we're going to put that link in for the workbook in the show notes, because all those awesome bonuses, the 10-week workshop and the keynote talk and everything, we'll have that in the show notes. Anywhere else we should go and check you out if we want to go deeper?
Yeah, if you want to go deeper, just go to my website, jackcanfield.com, and we have some online courses there that you can participate in. There are a bunch of free resources that we also have. I have a YouTube channel, a huge Facebook page, Instagram presence. So we have over 1.3 million people on Facebook, about 317 Twitter followers, etc. So if you want to be getting daily input, and we also now we have a Success TV channel we're doing right now too, which has about 40 episodes of me interviewing successful people like you and other people, not you yet, but we'll get there, but people that are in this world that are change makers and transformational teachers and so forth. So yeah, we have so many resources, ridiculous. Also, in the back of the workbook, there's a place to go online to the successprinciplesworkbook.com where I've listed 200 of the most influential books of my life.
Oh, wow.
That have changed my life. I used to read a book a day too. I've read over 3,000 books. Just to give me an idea, I'm going to write a book called "The Books That Changed My Life." I think I'll do that. But anyway, if you're wondering what to read, those are the books that have created the things that I believe in and the things that I'm teaching.
I love it. Thank you so much. Oh, I can't wait to check out that resource. I think this is the first book we should start with, and then we can move on to the other ones as well. Jack Canfield, thank you so much for jumping on today, allowing me to interview you. This is such a poignant time, no better time to really shift the way that we think about how we live our life, and you have really given us the guide to do so.
Well, my pleasure. Truly my pleasure. This was fun. Thank you.
Thank you.